So yesterday, your government passed a motion declaring climate change a national emergency, requiring emissions to be cut even more than we've already promised. And today you're approving a pipeline that is potentially going to increase emissions significantly. How do you juxtapose those two things?
Part of our climate plan is having an absolute cap on oil sands emissions from Alberta. This is about how we get our resources to new markets in the most efficient way, getting them to new markets, and making sure that we have money to pay for the transition to a green economy.
And I see a lot of discussion about Indigenous partnerships, Indigenous economic benefits. I don't see a lot of discussion, if any, about the possibility of selling it to other parties. Are we not negotiating with anyone else at the moment?
We have made the decision to purchase the pipeline based on de-risking that pipeline. There was political risks that private sector wasn't willing to take on, so we had to purchase the pipeline, but we have no intention of being the long-term operator of that pipeline. That's why we will eventually sell it, and that's why we're looking at Indigenous participation. Bill, you've been leading on that.
Really not much to add. I mean, the situation now is that we're in the process of moving forward, not in the process of actually engineering a sale. We want to make sure that Indigenous participation, meaningful Indigenous participation, is potentially part of the sale, and we need to work on that to make sure that we have a fair process. But we will be seeking new owners at the appropriate time when the project's de-risked.
The environmental left had voted for you in 2015 and is not in agreement with your decision to buy pipelines. How are you going to convince these people not to abandon the Liberals and go to the NDP or the Green Party? We need markets for our resources so long as the world is still dependent on conventional resources. We need money to pay for innovation and the transition toward a greener economy. But do you really think that's going to convince frustrated environmentalists when you say we need oil money to pay? I think Canadians understand full well that we have to create economic growth while protecting the environment. We can't do one without the other. The reality is there are political parties, there are people who want to pretend that we have to choose one or the other, the environment or the economy. But Canadians understand that we have to do both at the same time. We cannot create an economic plan without having a plan to counter climate change, and that's exactly what we're doing.
I got the questions. Just to pick up on Helene's point, I mean, British Columbia could be crucial in the next election. How are you going to win or retain enough votes in that province to stay in power, having just announced you're approving this expansion?
Our focus has been from the very beginning on growing the economy in ways that works for the middle class and on protecting the environment. We have done more to protect the environment than any other government in Canadian history, and we recognize there's more to do, and that's why we're going to continue to have an ambitious plan for the next 4 years that we'll be talking an awful lot about this summer and this fall. But at the same time, Canadians expect to see good jobs and a brighter future for their kids as we manage the transition in a world that is going through rapid changes. We have a plan for that, and Canadians know that we're on the right track.
And secondly, early this afternoon we had a briefing from senior officials. One of them said that the government was fully expecting legal challenges against today's decision. How realistic is it? How can you say that there's going to be construction starting this season if you're being faced with a whole bunch of new challenges?
First of all, we recognize and understand that there are people out there for whom no amount of accommodations or conditions or changes to the plan would have made the purchase of the Trans Mountain Pipeline and the approval of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion acceptable. Those people will not be convinced by the arguments that we've put forward. We accept that, and they will use the legal means at their disposal to advance that argument. But we also know, from having heard from hundreds upon hundreds of people in consultations, spoken with thousands upon thousands of Canadians across the country in various ways, that people expect us to move forward in ways that both create good jobs for the future and protect our environment for our kids. That's exactly what we're doing today, and that's what we're going to stay focused on.
Marie Mackey, La Presse.
Mr. Trudeau, good afternoon. What social acceptability is there for this adventure in Quebec? I think that Quebecers, like all Canadians, understand that we must create a greener economy. We have to pay for that transition. We have to export our resources in the right manner. Quebecers are as devastated as anyone else to see the increase in oil being transported by rail throughout the country. We all have keen memories of the tragedy of rail transport of oil. A pipeline is the safest way to transport our energy resources, and that's exactly what Quebecers and all Canadians understand. They know that we have a real and concrete plan that's very ambitious to counter climate change and create a greener economy, but we need resources for that. We need money to finance that transition. You had a longer than usual cabinet meeting today. To what extent are ministers behind you? Ms. Bennett, who's responsible for Indigenous affairs, is not here today. Should we deduce something from that? Well, I can assure you that if we had room for every cabinet member at this table, every cabinet member would be here. Indeed, there are far more than just the ministers here that are involved in this file in many different ways, but I can also tell you that Cabinet is solidly behind this decision. That's part of the promise we made to Canadians in 2015, that is to create economic growth while protecting the environment, and by building a plan that will lead to a greener and better future for all, with opportunities for our children and grandchildren.
The CBC.
Hi, Prime Minister. There are still some outstanding concerns in the Indigenous communities along the route, including the Coldwater community, which is worried about the pipeline route affecting their water supply. Our understanding from the briefing earlier is that route issue has not been resolved. So what assurances can you give communities like Coldwater that their drinking water is going to be safe?
What the Federal Court of Appeals asked us to do was to go back and do even more consultations and demonstrate that we were taking into account all the very real concerns that various communities had. And that's exactly what we've done. That's exactly what the Minister of Natural Resources has been engaged with over these past months. And Amarjeet, perhaps you'd like to speak directly to the kinds of conversations you've had.
I have met with Chief Lee a number of times, and we will continue to work with them, and the corporation will continue to work with them. We know the conclusion of the consultation process does not mean that our engagement with Indigenous community ends. It will continue, and we will continue to explore options with Chief Lee and many of the other Indigenous leaders who still have outstanding issues related to this project.
Understand that you will have consultations, but as of right now, the pipeline route stands, is my understanding, unless there's something we don't know. So are you telling them that the route is going to go where they don't want it to go, or are you open to changing it from this point forward?
There are a number of conversations that are ongoing with his community, and there's a process in place where our teams, as well as the TMC, which is the corporation, that we are exploring options with them on the routing issue, as well as some of the outstanding issues that community has.
Fanny Olivier, Radio Canada.
You said yourself that, in your opinion, the ballot question will be the environment. So doesn't this harm your credibility and your chances for re-election? There are political parties that claim that they take care of the environment and that means neglecting jobs, that you don't take care of economic growth, and that you only emphasize protecting the environment. Other political parties think that you completely disregard the environment and concentrate solely on the economy. What we know is that the best way to go about it is to do both at once, and that an approach based on one side of the equation without taking into account the other cannot succeed in either protecting the the environment or creating economic growth. Canadians understand that full well. They know we have to create growth and protect the environment. We have to create a plan for the economy that understands that transforming our economy towards a greener one is essential for the future. And that's exactly what we are counting on. We've managed to have a better environmental track record than any other Canadian government, and an excellent economic track record as well. We've created 1 million jobs. We've lifted 825,000 Canadians out of poverty. Do you have any recent estimates about how much the expansion project will cost and over how many years you can amortize it? Right now, we don't have the exact figures, but from Trans Mountain, we've heard that the project is economical. We will have more specific, precise figures in the coming weeks. We have to consider the permits. So there's still work to be done, but very soon we'll have more information.
Joyce Napier, CTV National News.
Prime Minister, so you bought the pipeline, you approved it. When is construction going to begin?
We have been assured by the company that their plan is to start construction this summer. There are still a number of immediate steps to do in terms of permitting, but the plan is to have shovels in the ground this summer.
Are you expecting more court challenges? And if so, will they stop that construction?
The Federal Court of Appeals provided us with a clear blueprint for how we needed to move forward in a way that both deepened and strengthened consultation with Indigenous peoples and strengthened some of the environmental elements they felt were lacking in the original approval in 2016. We worked with former Justice Iacobucci to ensure that we were meeting the high expectations of the Federal Court of Appeal, and we are confident that we have responded to what the court laid out as the right pathway forward towards an approval for this project, and that is the determination we made this morning in Cabinet.
Next question is from Justin from APTN.
Yes, Prime Minister, could you please define free, prior, and informed consent as it was applied to this case in determining whether proper consultations were met?
Well, the essence of the Federal Court of Appeals decision was it's not enough to just speak with or listen to Indigenous communities. We actually have to respond to and work with them to demonstrate that we were making changes based on what they said. That was the recommendation made, and that's exactly what the consultations led to.
Absolutely. Our consultation was very thoughtful, meaningful, two-way, and we listened very carefully to the concerns from the communities. We offer extensive, meaningful accommodations, and the way we responded to NEB 16 recommendations will help us deal with many of the issues that communities have identified, and we are satisfied that we have discharged our duty to consult with Indigenous communities.
We actually made changes to the process, to the NEB conditions based on those consultations, and that is an essential part of free, prior, informed consent.
What is the definition of free, prior, and informed consent then?
It is what we engaged in doing with Indigenous communities over the past number of months. It is engaging, looking with them, listening to the issues they have, and responding meaningfully to the concerns they have wherever possible.
Yes. Sean McCarthy, the Globe and Mail.
Prime Minister, you said in French that the goal of the project was not to increase production, and yet there are projections that oil sands production, if new pipelines are built, could increase by 1 million barrels a day from roughly 3 million barrels now. So are you comfortable with that level of increase?
Our plan to reach our Paris targets, which is working and will have us reach our Paris targets, includes an absolute cap on oil sands emissions. That is why we are comfortable that even as we move forward in a world that is continuing to rely on conventional energy for now, while we invest in the future, that we are able to reach those targets even as new resources are developed and old ones go offline. But I'll turn perhaps to Minister McKenna for further talk on Paris targets.
Well, it was extremely important that this project fit within our national climate plan. As the Prime Minister has made clear, it had to fit within the 100 megaton cap for oil sands emissions in Alberta. It was also clear that we needed to have a price on pollution across the country. There are some conservative premiers who don't believe or who believe it should be free to pollute. That's not our approach. And I was also really pleased that all the money from this project will go to fund the clean transition. We have a huge economic opportunity here in Canada. We're blessed with natural resources. Those are resources that are needed for the economy of today, yes, but also for the economy of tomorrow. And we have been investing in this clean transition since we started as a government. We spent over $50 billion in everything from cleaner transportation, so people can get around faster, cleaner, cheaper, in phasing out coal, while investing in a just transition for workers. The price on pollution, we're giving the money directly back such that 80% of families are better off. We're investing in clean technology, clean solutions, and I think we can stand on our record. We've created more than 1 million jobs with Canadians while having an ambitious climate plan that makes sure that life is affordable for people and also that we're creating good jobs. That's what we need to continue to do. That's what the whole world is working really hard to do, figure out the transition to a cleaner future. This money that will be invested will accelerate that transition, and we're going to continue to work hard. But we've been clear, we are going to meet our target, and then the whole world needs to do more. And we're seeing the impacts of climate change right now. And unfortunately, we have conservative politicians who do not understand that the environment and the economy have to go together, that we have to take ambitious climate action, and we can do it while life is affordable and we create good jobs.
Minister, as a follow-up, would you acknowledge that the increase of export capacity will encourage investment that would increase production in the oil sands, even if that's not perhaps, as you say, the goal of it?
Over the past couple of years, we have seen a near doubling of the amount of oil transported by rail. The question is not whether or not we export our conventional resources, it's where we export them. Right now, we are prisoners to the American market alone, and it's how we export them. We know that rail is both more polluting and more dangerous than a modern pipeline. That is why we're moving forward on accessing new markets and getting more money to invest in the clean energy transition.
Peter Mazur, the Hill Times, please.
Talking about that one buyer problem, is one pipeline going to be enough to solve that problem, or will we need more?
Bill?
Thank you. We're obviously here to talk about the renewed approval for the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We see this as critically important in ensuring that we have access to international markets. We're going to look towards working on this project and working towards a cleaner transition over time. That's an issue that if a proponent decides to bring forward, we'll consider at that time.
And just as a follow-up, if you can't find a buyer for the pipeline right away, next few years, and you're investing all the profits into clean energy projects, how is the government going to pay back to taxpayers the $14 billion it will cost to purchase the pipeline and build the expansion?
That's a lot of hypotheticals. Let me just give you the facts as I see them. We've had numerous outreaches from Indigenous groups that are interested in purchasing this pipeline that have actually worked together with financial backers. We've had corporations that have come to say that they're interested in the potential purchase of the pipeline. We've had our own analysis to say that this project is economic based on every single scenario that we've been presented with. So this is a project that makes good economic sense. It's going to generate significant amount of additional government revenues as a result of the ability to actually collapse some of that discount that we're getting on our current resources. And that's going to be positive for obviously for the long term of our economy, but also for our ability to transition. I'm confident that that the scenario that you're painting is not a scenario that we need to consider at this stage.
Second last question is Alex Ballingall, the Toronto Star, please.
It seemed no matter which way this decision would go today, that it would inflame the divisions that we've seen. Talk of Alberta separation, talk of potential Standing Rock style protests to this decision. Now that it's been made, how do you sort of cool that down and try and move forward?
I think Canadians can see that we've been entirely consistent in our approach since I gave a speech 6 years ago at the Calgary Petroleum Club, highlighting the fact that you cannot build new energy projects in this country without taking into account environmental concerns and without partnering with Indigenous peoples. That is the way things used to be done. You used to be able to decide where a railroad would go and just build it without consulting anyone along the route. The world has changed, and it's changed for the better. We now need to make sure that we are listening to a broad range of voices and working with people to allay concerns and allay fears and make sure that there are partnerships that ensure that there are benefits for everyone. But we know that there are still going to be people who remain unconvinced. But I also know that the vast majority of Canadians understand that we need to grow the economy and protect the environment at the same time. That is what we made as a commitment to Canadians in 2015, and that is we are going to continue to demonstrate every single day with the decisions this government makes, whether it's on historic levels of protection of marine and terrestrial areas, whether it's moving forward with the price on pollution, whether it's protecting our oceans, whether it's investing in the Coast Guard, or on the other side, whether it's about creating good jobs, creating economic growth, driving down unemployment, making life more affordable for Canadians by lowering taxes and delivering more child benefits. These are the things we committed to Canadians to do, and they're exactly what we're doing.
When do you expect the transition to clean energy, Canada's transition off fossil fuels, to be complete? When do you expect us not to need any fossil fuels?
We recognize that the world is looking towards, moving towards more renewable sources, and there are a lot of researchers, innovators, entrepreneurs, scientists trying to develop those next solutions for cleaner energy, for cleaner economies. We believe in investing in those solutions. We believe in facilitating those solutions that are going to be part of the transition, but we know it's not going to happen tomorrow.
La dernière personne sur mon liste, c'est Emily Bergeron de Québecor.
Last person on my list is Québecor. Many will say that the decision was taken ahead of time, despite this consideration after the Federal Court of Appeal decision, because Ottawa bought the pipeline, so it had to do something with it. What do you say to the people who say that this consideration served no purpose? On the contrary, with the Court of Appeal decision, we carefully looked at the steps necessary to arrive at a decision today. In our discussions today, we carefully looked at things. We asked an awful lot of questions from the Minister on the consultations that took place, on the improvements made to the process since 2016, with special attention paid to what was identified as deficiencies in the process in 2016. We were all perfectly prepared to say no, that we would not go forward if we had not met expectations established by the Court of Appeal. So we kept an open mind. We wanted to make the right decision for Canada, and we're confident that that's exactly what we did. Now, with regard to accommodations for Indigenous communities, these are not the main ones. Well, we made many changes to the conditions attached to this project, and we'll have more details to give you in due course. The important thing is to show that, contrary to the Conservatives, we don't see those who have questions or concerns about any kind of project as being adversaries. We feel that these are partners with whom we have to work in order to create economic growth and improve our situation in this country for future generations. So we listened to them, we worked with them insofar as possible in order to respond to their concern and alleviate their fears and build a solution that would work for everyone. There is no major project that will result in unanimity, but we have demonstrated a serious approach that takes into account the concerns that Canadians share, and that's what Canadians want. Thank you.
Ministers.
Thank you, Chris. Pleasure to be here.
Happy voting.
Merci tout le monde.
Voting.